Hi, I'm Trent Smith. I'm the Veggie project manager here at NASA Kennedy Space Center. And some of you may have noticed something that happened yesterday on Space Station. Well, today we harvested our ground plants, and we're going to talk about that a little bit and maybe have a little surprise at the end. We have some panelists here to talk to us about what's going on at NASA. And to my left, I have our Deputy Center Director, Janet Petro. And to my left, I have, my further left, I have Ronnie Lawson. He's our Assistant Director for the Space Station, International Space Station here at Kennedy Space Center. And further down the row, we have Lisa Colorado. She's our Associate Manager for the Commercial Crew Program. And at the end, batting last, we have Dr. Joy Amasa, our Veggie scientist, lead scientist. Thank you. And so I'd like to ask Janet just to take a couple minutes and talk to us about what's going on here at Kennedy Space Center.
Well, thanks a lot, Trent, and I really want to thank you for inviting me to participate in this event today. Something you may not know about me is one of my favorite hobbies or things to do is cooking. I'm very passionate about cooking, so I'm really pleased to be here and be able to hopefully taste some of this stuff you have growing over there. And I'm also glad that it's not potatoes. So for some of you who've read The Martian, and the whole potato thing, I'm glad it's something about lettuce because I like that a lot more. So let's talk a little bit about NASA. It has a huge heritage and legacy of innovation, and I personally think that's one of the reasons that we've been the #1 best places to work for 3 years in a row is because we have a culture of innovation within our workforce, and I think it starts all the way, from Charlie Bolden, who has put out a lot of memos, and in almost every talk that he gives, he talks about innovation and our workforce and encourages and challenges us all the way down to each individual employee to look at the things we do and to be innovative and add value to what we do every day for our mission. I don't know if you saw Dr. Dava Newman. She held last week. She held a session with a group of employees and challenged them to talk about what are additional things they could do with innovation. And I know Lisa Rowe, another one of our senior leaders at the agency level, this past week talked with a group of deputy chief technologists from around the agency and asked them about what it is we can do as an agency to be more forward-leaning and to challenge ourselves to add more value to what we do. And so Veggie, I'm not going to talk very much about Veggie because I know there are people far more knowledgeable about this particular project, and you're going to hear more about it from them. But what I wanted to say was, Veggie was just a low-cost growth chamber, and we all know, if you watched the news yesterday, that they harvested it on the International Space Station. And we know the International Space Station is a great research platform that we have for us that's in low Earth orbit, and we're learning how to live and work in that low Earth orbit so that we can go beyond that into the proving ground and then on to Mars and our journey to Mars. And what I think is most important about that is harvesting those vegetables. We are still on the International Space Station reliant on the Earth. But as we move out to Mars, we're going to have to learn how to be Earth independent. So I think this is a great step on the space station that demonstrates how through innovation and technology we can learn to be less Earth reliant, and so we can propel ourselves on the journey to Mars much quicker. And then finally, I just wanted to put in a plug for what we're doing here at Kennedy Space Center. I think most of you, or hopefully most of you, have heard of our Innovation Expo that's coming up in October. This is an annual event, and every year it's gotten better and better. It's hosted, executed, and managed by a group called the Spaceport Innovators that are a self-formed, self-managed group. And every year they've done a really tremendous job of doing different things on it. And this year I know they're intending to engage the public through the Visitor Center at the same time that we're holding the Innovation Expo here on Center. So I want to encourage everybody to please attend that. And one of the great things they do there is they have a kickstarting campaign. So always looking for innovative ideas from employees to come. You pitch your idea to the group, and if you win through this kickstarting challenge, you get a little bit of money to go off and do something innovative that will help add value to what we're doing out here at Kennedy. So thank you. I look forward to your questions.
Awesome. Thank you, Janet. Appreciate it. So next we have Ronnie Lawson, who's going to talk a little bit about Space Station and what we're doing 9 times faster than a bullet.
Good morning. Glad you all came out. Just to follow on what Janet said, there's something you may not know about me. Cooking's not my big deal, but I like to eat. So this is that's a well-kept secret. But so since 1998, myself and a lot of other folks over in the station program, we've been all about the construction and the maintenance and keeping Space Station on orbit and flying. It's been a really big part of some of our careers. Sometimes you get so busy doing what you're doing to ask the question, why are you doing what you're doing? And what we saw yesterday with Veggie, that's why we did what we did and why we're doing what we're doing with Space Station. Station was designed as a world-class laboratory for exploration and betterment of life here on Earth. And things that we're learning through Veggie, or we're demonstrating through Veggie, are going to be completely applicable not only for exploration as we go forward, but also here on Earth. Joya has spoken to me a little bit about something called vertical farming, which I had no idea about, but it's very much some of the same challenges that we have on station for plant production and growing food. Urban areas have as far as space and the ability to grow food. So Veggie really is a good test bed for using this kind of technology in the future as we go farther out into the universe, but also what can we do here on Earth. So, the food that they get from Veggie is not going to feed the crew. There's not that kind of volume that we're going to be growing, but it does provide some good, nutritious food that shakes their diet up a little bit rather than the stuff they eat every day. They get really a good physiological and psychological boost from the act of gardening and just the aesthetics of seeing something grow, in that pretty much sterile environment they're on station. So Veggie has really been a great thing there. We're doing a ton of other stuff that's near term and farther out that's in that same vein of exploration like Veggie. For instance, we're developing another plant habitat right now, the advanced plant habitat, which again is going to be used for crop size plants like Veggie does, but it's going to be able to control a lot of the variables that affect plant growth, like humidity, temperature, carbon dioxide, and lighting and all of that. So where Veggie is a good platform for growing plants, APH is going to be a good platform for taking some of those variables and understanding exactly what space-grown plants go through being in zero G and in confined space. So that's exciting to us, and that'll be ready next year to start getting ready to fly to station. Also in our shop, we are now doing AES and STMD, where there's a ton of other type of projects going on right now that are in this same exploration vein. We're studying things like being able to go and take regolith and build structures on an outpost, or mining gases and even rocket fuel from regolith. So all of those things are going to be important stepping stones along the way if we're going to Mars. So like I say, Veggie's a good first step, very exciting, and I'm really proud of the team that worked with us that pulled this off. So
Thanks, Ronnie. Appreciate it. And Lisa's going to talk to us about commercial crew program and a little bit about commercial space. So, Lisa.
Okay, thanks, Trent. So sometimes people wonder, why is commercial crew sitting here with the station project going on and the Veggie projects? And really, the commercial crew program is really hand in hand connected with the ISS and also the agency's overall path to get to Mars. Having a commercially available vehicle that will take crew to and from station is really, really critical to better understanding the capabilities that we need to develop on the International Space Station Laboratory, and also the long duration missions that are coming up to get to Mars, in a couple of really important ways. One is, we're going to be, our requirement is to have 4 crew on our commercial vehicles. So this is 1 crew more that we currently have available on the Soyuz missions. And so that crew, and the time that they can spend on station to do science is, it's like gold. They have a very limited time, and the extra crew will equate to about 40 hours of research and science that they could take advantage of to do projects like Veggie and other innovative projects that are yet to be coming our way. And all of those will help in the path. We're just part of one piece of the big puzzle to get the agency to get to Mars. We are working daily with our commercial partners. We have Boeing's CST-100 is in development as we speak, and the SpaceX Crew Dragon. Again, they'll have the capability to have 4, but typical with industry, there's a lot. It opens up a lot of opportunity for other kind of innovation. So although our commercial providers are required to have 4 crew, they have capabilities that will include more than 4 crew. Could be for other kind of payloads and other cargo and science that could go up. It could be some experiments that you all, or maybe your kids or somebody else will be providing in the future. And again, it's all this path for the agency to get experience, the knowledge, the proving ground to go from what we know now and what we need to know to sustain long duration human space flight to get to Mars. And it's going to be a big challenge for the agency. That's a couple of year mission. So, there's going to be a lot of learning we need to do. And Veggie is just one piece, one small step towards that journey to Mars.
Thank you, Lisa. And as a payload manager, we look forward to the extra crew time. And lastly, certainly not least, we have Dr. Joy Massa, who's going to talk to us a little bit about Veggie and kind of plants in space and the future of plants in space. So, Joya, take it away.
Thanks, Trent. So I'm honored to be up here representing the Veggie team, and I'm so happy to see a great portion of that team here. Congratulations to everyone. Veggie really is all about teamwork. The more involved I've gotten, the more I've seen that science is really just a very small part of everything that it takes to do research in space, to do food production in space, because we are research, but we're also making something to eat. And so we have a wonderful team. The core of the team is Kennedy here. We've really embraced the plant research here, and this is kind of sprung out of this group. But we also have team members at Johnson Space Flight Center, Marshall Space Flight Center, even Glenn Research Center, and of course the folks at headquarters who've really enabled this to go on. The astronauts who are our inspiration, our excitement, we can't thank them enough for all their hard work on this. This is building on decades of plant research, of research in plant space biology, bioregenerative life support systems, and controlled environment agriculture that have gone on at NASA, at universities, and at research centers around the world. And so we're building on this really strong foundation of knowledge. And we have a public-private partnership that's been key, actually several. The first and foremost is Orbitech, which designed and built the Veggie hardware through NASA's Small Business Innovative Research Program, and continued to work with us through different iterations of Veggie until we got to flight. But in addition, we've had other companies that have been involved, that have provided technical expertise and research and support for this project, and we really can't thank them enough. We've had educators and fellows and students and interns involved in this, and we're actually just beginning a new education program with Fairchild Tropic Botanic Garden in South Florida, where they're going to engage hundreds of school children to help us select the next crops that may be grown in Veggie. So we're really excited about that, and excited about all the potential for inspiring that Veggie has had. And we've been really fortunate because Veggie has shown us that we can grow plants in space pretty darn similarly to how we're growing them here on Earth. And that's great because that opens up a lot of potential for new research that we can be doing here, testing, and then flying up there. And it also gives us a lot of confidence that we can grow food in Veggie and in Veggie's follow-ons to feed the crew and to do it safely. So it's been a wonderful experience for me, and I think I can speak on behalf of the team that for all of us, we've really enjoyed it. I think the appeal of Veggie is, you know, as some of my fellow speakers have said, we engage not just the gardeners, but the people who like to cook and the people who like to eat. And that's a pretty big percentage of the population. So I think we were all a little surprised at how engaging it was for the general public, but, you know, that's just wonderful. I think Veggie is really from the earth, you know, off the earth, for the earth, and for the future. And as one of my favorite quotes from yesterday's media feeding frenzy is you know, it's a really inspiring salad. You know, it's just it's a momentous salad. So I think with that we will go to the video of the crew harvesting.
Thanks, Joy.
And we're standing by now for the first consumption of one of these red romaine lettuce leaves that has been grown in the microgravity of space.
So this is astronaut Kjell Lindgren, and he's harvesting half the leaves for the consumption harvest, and then the other half are going to be returned here for science analysis. The first set of plants, which were grown last year, were returned for scientific analysis, and that's what really enabled us to have the crew be able to eat the plants this time. So with that, we're going to do some harvesting of our own. This plant here is actually not the red romaine lettuce. This is a Tokyo Bacana Chinese cabbage, which will fly up again. And we are going to harvest some of these leaves. So, get my gloves. We're trying to take care of the plants in a very clean way. And so that's why the astronauts generally were wearing gloves when they handled the plants. You know, especially on space station where it's pretty tricky to clean your produce. So, we're going to use gravity to work on our behalf, however, so we don't have to worry about the leaves floating away like they did.
So yesterday, Kjell Lindgren, when he harvested the lettuce, he kind of set down a leaf and then it started floating away, and Scott Kelly came in and helped out. So he had a lot of good teamwork there.
I think he was hoping there was some Velcro on the back of it, but we didn't have any Velcro. So this is
so salad, I'm going to just, she's been
early.
About a month ago, I took Salad up to Day on the Hill. So Salad is kind of our ambassador for Veggie 3. And she was in many photographs with a couple astronauts that were there, Reed Wiseman and Butch Wilmore. Charlie Bolden held her, and we talked about the astronauts eating, and members of Congress and the staffers that make the laws were all very excited to meet Salad. That's her name, by the way, Salad. And so we're going to get seeds, just like Salad, flown up on the next SpaceX mission. We're targeting SpaceX 8. We'll see when that flies. We'll see if we make that. But we'll get it up on SpaceX 8 or SpaceX 9, and we'll have those positioned. And the astronauts will be able to grow those when they're ready. So the next crop on space station, at least that's edible, will be cabbage.
And then these dwarf tomato plants are plants that we're hoping to fly in a couple of years as well. We've been doing a lot of research here on what other crops we might grow in Veggie, and dwarf tomato is an excellent candidate. So we have here some of the red romaine lettuce that were harvested from our ground control plants this morning. And right now, I'm going to sanitize the cabbage leaves using some wipes, the same way that the crew did on orbit. But while I'm doing that, I think we can play the next video, which actually shows the crew enjoying the fruits of their labor.
All right. Cheers, 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 cheers.
That's awesome. Good.
Tastes good.
Yeah. I like that.
Kind of like arugula.
Yeah. It's fresh. That's solid.
Yeah. Let's try some.
American chicken.
Try some oil and vinegar.
That's
Yeah, there's his own.
And you don't know like veggie. That was good. That was big. Yeah.
Say something about lettuce.
Can you cut the oil?
That was cool.
Say something about lettuce.
All right, so Joya is just now getting the cabbage leaves in between the Pro San wipes, and the Pro San wipes are a citric acid-based sanitizing solution that our team here at Kennedy made up. We got 10 wipes per bag. This is actually the one that we used for our ground control earlier, and so just like they did, they put it in between the Pro San wipes to make good contact, and then she's going to compress it for, in Texas we say 30 Mississippi. And lightly doing it because it's roughly, so you want to make sure it makes good contact, and then it should be good to eat. Now, when we did the analysis, the plants that we looked at and tested came back as clean, if not cleaner, than those that you would buy in a grocery store. So this is really just a precautionary step that we do, just like you do at home, right? You wash your plants before you eat them, typically. Well, most of you probably do. So anyway, that's what we're doing. And then we do have some oil, some extra virgin olive oil, some balsamic vinegar, and we're going to taste the fruits of our veggie team's labor here soon. So, and then in addition to that, we're going to test out the Veggie 3 crop, and we'll see maybe a comparative difference. I think the crew, this is my personal opinion because I've tried both, I think they're going to like the cabbage even more. Yep. But I'll let you make your own judgment.
Are we going to get a bite of both?
You are going to get the bite of both, I believe.
Awesome.
And then we're going to call up a couple of our audience members and let them test
Very good.
for themselves. So
was
I hope
talking-
you're hungry.
I was talking to Ronnie and said that I can't imagine how good fresh lettuce
I
would
know,
taste up there
I
because
know.
I crave that. Sometimes you just really want something.
a couple days without that.
And he said that he'll be really impressed when they start grilling steaks and stuff up there.
So Joy, I didn't know if we wanted to maybe have a plate for everyone. So if they want to squirt a little oil and vinegar, that would be.
Ideal.
Yeah, this is my fine compliments from home. So I think it. I got young kids, so this is what we use.
Can I just grab one?
So I do have a question. Was there any difference between the lettuce growing up there and the lettuce growing on the ground when they tested it from before?
From a food safety standpoint, everything was good, and we did. Our team here actually did a mineral composition.
Mm-hmm.
They ran antioxidant activity, and they did what makes it red is anthocyanin. So what makes it red is anthocyanin, and anthocyanin is actually a antioxidant. And for the most part, everything was pretty much the same. And we had 3 plants last year. We had I think 5 ground plants, and so for the number, it was hard to know. Yeah, go ahead and dig in. This is
One time we can eat with
this is the one time you don't need permission. Give it a try.
There you go. You're not going to have any oil or vinegar?
I'm gonna try it both before and after.
Probably going to spill it all over. Balsamic vinegar.
Mhm.
Yeah, they had that up there. They made a very big point of talking about the balsamic
salad
vinegar and
dressing.
the olive oil. It was very cute.
Very different. Very different. All right.
Delicious.
It's like my lunch.
I know.
Okay. come on up, grab some produce.
These are way better looking than the
So
ones
this
that I
is,
would grow in my garden.
Me too. We have Mary
Ours
Hunter
look all horrible.
and Lachelle Spencer, part of our veggie team. So Mary actually is a microbiologist, and Lachelle's a chemist. So when I say the veggie team did analysis, here's the veggie team that did the analysis. The part of the veggie team that did it. So thank you.
Yay.
So how about everybody that's on the veggie, that work veggie, raise their hand, just to get an idea. Look at that.
Hey, Joy, when you get a moment, give me paper towels down.
Thank you. Y'all did great. You
So
grew-
Joya,
you
why
grew-
did we-
Tastes good.
Why did we pick the
Thank you.
outrageous lettuce that we picked?
So, I mentioned that we're standing on a strong foundation, and so that was actually tested for a number of years here at Kennedy Space Center, for its productivity, and it's a very productive salad crop. It grows very well. It has very reliable germination. It's also very attractive. Has high levels of antioxidants and anthocyanins, which most red vegetables do. And so that's beneficial because it could be a potential countermeasure against space radiation damage. And it also, as a lettuce, has very low natural microbial levels. So a lot of bacteria and fungi just do not grow on the leaves. So we thought that would be very good from a food safety point of view. And it tastes pretty good, too.
Very good.
All right. So you've tried it. So Lisa, which one did you think you liked better? Just curious.
I think I like the cabbage better, but they're both really good.
Ronnie?
Cabbage.
Janet?
I like both, but I think they're leaning towards a cabbage.
So I think this is really telling. The cabbage, and I'll let Joy, as soon as she gets a chance to stop serving us all, tell the story. But we actually did part of the human research program. The team here at Kennedy Space Center, Dr. Ray Wheeler and Joy Massa and Lachelle and Mary and a number of others have actually studied a number of these leafy greens, and the cabbage scored the highest for its flavor. And so that is one of the deciding factors why it's a primary part of Veggie 3, is we want the astronauts to taste the most flavorful leafy green.
Nutritionally, are they pretty close to the values?
I defer to Dr. Massa on that.
I'm going to get something to eat. So nutritionally, the cabbage did not score as highly as some of the other crops, but it had the highest ratings from a horticultural point of view. So it was very easy to grow, very vigorous. How am I doing this?
I just scored it right on.
Well, I didn't know if it had the stalk.
Oh, you got to tip it, sorry.
Okay.
Doesn't have a spout.
So it was actually a great plant to grow. It scored very highly there, and from the taste tests, it scored incredibly highly. So we grew 8 different varieties of leafy greens, including outrageous, but we had others that we were hoping would be good candidates, and we harvested a large amount. We sent them refrigerated to Johnson Space Center, where they have the Advanced Food Technology Group, who are part of our larger veggie team, and the organoleptic lab. So that's where they do the taste tests. And so they did a taste panel of the top 4 growing vegetables that had the highest nutrition and the best growth. And the Chinese cabbage scored most highly of all of those. So we were delighted. And so, that's how we've selected it for the next flight.
And so you also selected it, so I think that's pretty cool. Well, while Joya gets her snack, let's offer anyone in the audience have a question.
I am mentoring a 10-year-old NASA girl from Wisconsin who also loves to cook. And so this question is for her. She knows that you're not supposed to cut lettuce, you tear lettuce because it affects the taste. And she felt that it looked like they were doing surgery on the lettuce between the gloves and the scissors and everything. And she wanted to know why they didn't just tear into it.
I'm going to defer to Joya, but part of that too is because we didn't want their hands. We wanted their hands to be clean when they were cutting the lettuce, and then I'll defer to Joya for the cutting part.
So originally, when we did the harvest last year, we brought the plants back frozen, and so one of the things we sent was a tool set. So we sent a tool set up which had scissors and forceps, because we really didn't want them handling the plants. You know, we wanted to see kind of what were the native microbial levels on the plant surface. And so the tools were already there. And we just adapted this harvest procedure to that because they weren't really allowed to eat the entire plant this time. We wanted to still bring back some of the plant for scientific experimentation. So we just had them remove selected leaves. But I think part of the reason also is because Chell is a doctor. We thought he might just be a little more comfortable doing surgery. But it was mostly just to keep things clean. They clean the tools with those same produce sanitizing wipes before and after use. So, good question.
Okay. I see a Veggie team member back there, Chuck Spurn.
I understand from looking at the photos that you provided every day that the plants on orbit grew actually better than the plants in our ground control, and I wonder if there's any theories as to why that is in the Veggie system.
I have a couple theories, but it was actually a lot of fun letting the crew know that they were winning. All right? And when we did start injecting water directly into the pillows, when the little plant in plant B popped a leaf out on Sunday, it was a big surprise. I had given up on that plant, actually, and so we started watering that pillow again. And so those plants started growing really, they were ahead of our ground plants. And I think part of that is because you have more effective wicking or moisture wicking in space because it doesn't need to fight against gravity. Where our ground plants, if we put too much water into the plant pillow, for instance, it would drip through one of the corners. I believe I only recall one instance where they only added a particular amount of water because it started coming out of one of the seams. So I think it's basically has to do with passive wicking and the lack of gravity. But, Joya, do you have any?
Well, yeah, I mean, I would agree. You know, we grew our ground controls here in controlled environment chambers that were set to mimic the space station environment for temperature, relative humidity, and carbon dioxide. So we tried to eliminate as many variables as we can. And we used exactly the same, flight hardware for the operations. So, gravity has a lot of different impacts on things, but fluids and gas movements are probably one of the main ones. And I think watering your plants in space and watering them the same on the ground is one of the biggest challenges because, the fluids just behave so very differently. So, I sort of liken watering plants in microgravity to kind of being on that knife edge between flooding and drought. You're always trying to find that happy medium. But I think they did really well up there. The astronauts took really good care of them. Down here, we again had gravity working against us. So, yeah, I think it's probably just water.
Yeah. I think the astronauts won, for sure.
So I'd like to know if the plants that you have both here and up at the station grow at the same speed that the traditional plants grow, or can you speed up the process?
When we grow plants in controlled environments like Veggie, we actually are speeding up quite a lot over growing plants outside because we've eliminated a lot of the stress, and stress is really what slows plants down. We did still have some water stress during this experiment where they didn't get quite enough water and we had the crew manually intervene. And so that did slow them down for a couple of days, but that was pretty similar between ground and flight. So we're still working on getting that happy medium with the watering. But as far as we can tell, the growth rate was pretty much the same.
All right.
This question's for Dr. Massa. I wouldn't have thought that there would be careers at NASA in growing plants. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of this and why students should consider coming to NASA?
That's a good question. Yeah, I mean, the more I get exposed to what goes on at NASA, the more careers I see. I mean, there's so many things that one can do involved with spaceflight and almost anything that you can think of. The plant science, for me, you know, I was inspired by an educator when I was young who was invited here and learned about the plant research at Kennedy. And I just thought the whole thing was really fascinating and decided that I wanted to do that. And took me a while, but I got here eventually. And I'm very fortunate to be doing what I do because I think it's awesome. But, you know, I think there are so many interesting careers that students can do. And when you put a space spin on things, it just makes it that much cooler. I mean, we're all part of this incredible team and we're all working towards the same goals. And, you know, we can't do it alone. So I think any career that you engage in, if you think about, well, what could that be like if I did it working for space, just makes it much more interesting, in my opinion. I'm a little biased, though.
Thanks, Joy. We have one down here.
Yeah, I was just wondering, now that we've gone from packing a picnic basket for space flight to actually beginning to grow along the way, one of the crops I'm interested is in herbs and spices, as to what work you've done in that, because those are the ones that can really add flavor to the crew and might be of great interest to them.
It's definitely a really important area. You know, the Russians have already done some work where they grow onions up in space, and then the crew members take the onion greens and chop them up and mix them in with the packaged food. And that right there shows that this is something that's desirable. With the fluid shift in spaceflight, where, you know, kind of everything pools up in your head and you get the kind of puffy face, it's your sense of taste is a little bit muted. And from anecdotal evidence, the crew really wants things like hot sauce and spices because they can't taste things quite as well, which is why some of the more strong flavored vegetables might be a lot better for space as well. But I think herbs would be another way to get at that. We've done some testing with onions in the past, dwarf onions and chives, also basil. Mint could easily be grown. We looked at oregano, that was a little trickier. Some of the woodier herbs, like, you know, rosemary, they would take a while, but there's no reason that they couldn't be grown if we had a dedicated space station herb garden.
So I'd like to take that one question. What herbs would you grow? Garlic. How about you, Ronnie? What would you grow on the way to Mars?
Beef.
Beef. I was thinking a cupcake plant myself, but
Tomatoes.
Tomatoes?
Tomatoes.
How about you, Lisa?
I would probably want some fruit, like blueberries or strawberries, something like that.
Yeah.
I'm
So
a
that,
big
you
fruit
know,
person.
one of the fruits that our team's looking at, Joy, you want to let the cat out of the bag?
Yeah, well, we have done work with strawberries in the past, and that is a good candidate. But we are currently working on dwarf fruit trees, specifically dwarf plum. And so we have a number of dwarf plum lines growing right now, and they're pretty amazing. They start from a seed to producing another fruit within about a year. So in terms of fruit trees, that's a very fast life cycle, and they stay very low, and they're kind of a creeping, almost a viney type plum. So we're hoping that something like that could go up in Veggie sometime soon.
And I'll add that the interesting to me that I've learned about the plums is it actually helps with bone remodeling, which means it helps build bone,
Yeah,
which could be kind of beneficial for folks stepping out into the solar system. So,
definitely.
all right, do we have any other questions? Oh, right up front here. Dr. Wanda Jones, please.
Hi. My question is for Dr. Massa. Veggie, what are some of the applications that Veggie has here on Earth and some of the benefits to mankind here?
That's a great question. You know, as Ronnie alluded to, urban agriculture, vertical farming is getting much more important. You know, there are a lot of people on this planet. We're growing all the time, and a lot of people live in urban areas. So there's a lot of work going on in the controlled environment agriculture field on optimizing indoor plant production and, you know, kind of seeing how many plants you can grow in a given volume, which is exactly what we want to do for space. We stop thinking about area and we start thinking about volume. And so we're learning a lot of lessons with Veggie, and we're going to learn a lot more with the advanced plant habitat about fundamental plant physiology. You know, there's been decades of research here at Kennedy Space Center looking at lighting specifically for plants, and that's why Veggie uses the light-emitting diodes that you see. It casts kind of a pink-purple light. This is because we're specifically tuning those lights to the frequencies that plants need and the intensities that plants need. So, you know, sunlight might be free, but it's actually not all that free when you have to think of the cost of cooling and other aspects of using sunlight. If we can use electric lighting to custom light our plants, we can increase the productivity. And so a lot of this research has translated into commercial horticultural areas. In terms of the media, the substrate, the watering system, you know, we're learning a lot of lessons from that as well. And just the types of crops, you know, that's a big one, because if you're growing things out in your garden, you don't have to worry about how big the plants are. But if you're doing this in a more urban setting or indoor gardening, you want small crops that have what we call a high harvest index, which is the proportion of edible to the total yield. You know, the stems and leaves of tomatoes aren't something you can eat, so you have to figure a way to recycle that, to recapture those nutrients if you want to do sustainable production, and that's something that our team has worked on for a long time here as well. So all of these lessons are going to translate into more sustainable food production for the future.
Thanks, Joya. So we have one more question here.
Hi. I wondered, basically, astronaut Scott Kelly had said when he tasted the lettuce that it tasted like arugula. So I know it wasn't arugula. So I just wondered, like, what was the difference in the taste, and then how does the water get absorbed in the soil? I mean, how does it grow? What makes it stick?
So the arugula comment was really interesting because we were wondering if the lettuce would be more bitter. You know, if you've grown lettuce in your garden here, when it gets kind of a little old or when it's under some stress, it will get a little more bitter. Lettuce is actually a latex-bearing plant, and it can build up a little more of that latex, and that gives it a bitter flavor. So I think the arugula could have been because there was some stress in microgravity, and then there was also the water stress that we mentioned, which the plants kind of grew out of, but that could leave a residual flavor. But because of that fluid shift, I think they probably really enjoyed that flavor because it's a stronger flavor. The cabbage is actually more of a bitter green than lettuce, and everyone seems to really enjoy that flavor as well. In terms of how the plants actually grow, we use a baked ceramic. So I'm going to pull this little guy up. This is what we call a plant pillow. And so there are sort of small particles. It's almost like, it looks like kitty litter. It's not kitty litter. It's a baked clay. And then we have also a controlled release fertilizer in there, a polymer coated fertilizer that's mixed in with this clay. And we fill up this plant pillow with that, and we put some wicks in to act as a conduit for water until the plant grows, and the seeds are planted in those wicks. And you can see that there's fabric on the bottom. So this allows the plant to wick up from a reservoir that it's sitting on. So we have the ability to add water directly, and the astronauts start by initially priming that pillow. Everything is sent up completely dry, and the seeds are planted dry. The plants that were grown and harvested yesterday on Space Station, they've been up there for a year and a half because we planted those seeds for a long time ago. I guess they'd been planted for a year and a half. They'd been up there for a bit over a year, and they still were viable, which just goes to show that seeds really will store very well for long periods of time. So when they add water, the seeds start to germinate, and then the plant kind of takes over that water column where it's drawing water up and it's transpiring it out through the leaves. And that water is actually reclaimed on Space Station and recycled and cleaned and reused. So it's a nice system for cleaning your water as well. And then the plants just grow until you harvest them. Yeah.
Thanks, Joya. Looks like we have a question down here, JC.
To kind of follow on with that, you mentioned you grew lettuce last year, so this is our second grow out. A couple of questions. Have you seen any difference between the grow outs at this early stage? And second question, Do we have anything else to grow?
So we really haven't seen too many differences. I think the germination and growth rate were very similar. You know, we actually saw the plants grow a little better on orbit this time than last time. We did have to have the crew add water directly to those plant pillows at about the same time as last time. We'd had more plants grow this time, which was great. But in terms of the seeds being stored for so long, I don't think that was an issue. We may have had a little bit lower germination, a couple of seeds that only had, you know, pillows that only had one seed come out when we put 2 in each one, but we'll have to look at that. We have one additional set of plant pillows up there. If you see our logos on a lot of our shirts here, there are some flowers on them, and those are the zinnias. So originally we had sent 2 sets of lettuce and a set of zinnias. And zinnias are these small little daisy-like plants. And we tested those because we weren't sure if the crew would be able to eat the produce right away, and we wanted them to have something they could grow and enjoy while they were waiting for us to get the data and to get all of the approvals that we needed for the crew to actually eat what they grew. So we sent the zinnias up there, and they're still there. We're hoping that now that they've gotten a taste for growing crops up there, that the current crew will be interested in growing those. And then again, as Trent said, we'll send some more pillows up on the next SpaceX mission as well, with the cabbage and some more lettuce.
Right, and I could add to that a little bit. The reason why we had a second crop of lettuce rather than the zinnias was crew time. We have very, very challenged with crew time. And so when commercial crew gets flying and we have that 7th crew member on space station and we double the research time, hopefully, you know, we'll get a lot more research done. And, you know, as a veggie guy, of course, I'm hoping to get more crops grown. So I just wanted to mention that. Do we have any, Wanda? Or Brian, please.
Quick question. So if Ronnie gets his dream payload of something that makes steak, is there a chance of growing something like a potato or with veggie, or is that a possibility?
Well, for the below ground crops, we'll need to design something a little different than the root pillows. We can grow radishes in these, and the radish kind of pops up above the top, whereas most of the roots are below ground. But for potatoes, carrots, things like that, we would need to design a slightly different rooting system, because right now they don't really have a way to open up these pillows and access them. But it's totally possible. We actually, you know, I know you don't like potatoes, Janet, but we actually have done, you know, a tremendous amount of potato research here at Kennedy Space Center and grown world record yields of potatoes in chambers that we've had here. And we have one of the world potato experts is a plant physiologist here, so, and a member of our veggie team. So I think we could totally modify for potatoes. They've even grown peanuts, and peanuts are really a cool crop because they bury their flower stalk, and that's where the nut forms. It's underground. So they had to design a whole modified system specifically to allow that to happen. But we have an incredible team of engineers who are really creative, so I think we could come up with something.
Hi, my question is actually for the other 3 members of the panel. I am an educator. I teach middle and high school students over in Orlando, and I've had the tremendous honor of being able to work with the Veggie team for the past 3 summers and taken the information that I've learned about the research and integrated it into my class lesson plans and shared it with other teachers. One of the wonderful things about Veggie is that my students connect very easily with Veggie because they can relate to the lettuce. So I wanted to ask the other panel members in regards to Commercial Crew, International Space Station, and Kennedy Space Center, what, if you had the opportunity to talk with middle school and high school students, what would you share with them that you feel would help them, that would easily help them connect with the very important message that all 3 of you could share with them about your programs?
Yeah, who wants to go first? I don't want to volunteer anybody.
I think Joy had touched on it a little bit before, but I know I came into NASA late, and I had a vision, even though I grew up right outside the gates, that everybody inside the gates of the Space Center like these world-class lab coat wearing scientists and engineers. And she touched on it before. There's a job for anyone in any field at this Space Center. I mean, I look at just Chris and the guys who work in the comm area. I mean, English majors and communications majors probably don't realize that there's a huge career opportunity in NASA, and it's just as important as anything any of us do. People who work with their hands, machinists, there's just such a variety of potential careers, and I don't think we do a good job of selling that, because I think the general community and the school kids think if it's not traditional STEM, they have no place in NASA. And I think that's just to tell you something that we've been talking about recently, there's a initiative going on that the ISS program is working called Hunch, which works with high school students, Palm Bay particularly, that we support, that where kids are machinists or even they're using the sewers, so from the fashion design, to build spaceflight hardware for NASA. And to me, that's talking about getting kids excited and keeping them in school. That's the kind of stuff that will do it.
So, first of all, I mean, I can appreciate you as a teacher. You being here and translating information to the students is probably the best thing to do, honestly. You know, anything that you take back from them, they're going to relate to you, and therefore they're going to probably get interested in the subject matter. So I really appreciate you being here and doing that for us, because it's really everybody getting the word out that really affects and connects with people. And I think, I mean, from a commercial crew standpoint, I think one thing is human spaceflight is just kind of cool. And, you know, in general, if you've ever had an opportunity for your kids, you're close enough that once we're starting to have launches again with people on board, humans on board, that's just, I don't know if there's anything else that can recreate that excitement and that feeling when you're standing there and realizing there are people that are, you know, being launched. So that's one way. And then I feel like it's a little bit relatable, but I mean, at some point there was a time when the general public didn't have capability or access to just fly on an airplane, right? I mean, it was pretty limited to just a few, the military, and, you know, it was a very small percentage of the population. And there's going to be a day where they're going to be buying seats, you know, we're going to be buying rides to go to space. So, I mean, I think they can relate to, you know, riding and just going further and doing, you know, different things. But, you know, buying a ride or buying a seat on a space plane would be kind of cool. At some point, we're going to be able to do that. Mm-hmm.
And I would also like to thank you for being a teacher. I have a number of relatives. My sister's a teacher, a bunch of friends in Orlando, as well as my daughter-in-law is a teacher. So I'm at various grade levels, all the way from first grade all the way up to you know, through high school. And so I applaud you for that. And I also know how difficult it is for teachers to be able to introduce curriculum and introduce topics that just isn't exactly what's on their lesson plan and what's supposed to. So I really appreciate you reaching out. I would encourage you, we have a lot of programs, not just here at Kennedy Space Center, but throughout the agency that where we interact with the educator community. You know, our Office of Education at the agency level, and we run a number of these programs, a number of the agency programs right here from Kennedy Space Center that I would bet that most teachers, I know the ones that even my friends and family, they don't know anything about. And it's because of the time that you have, you know, as a teacher to be able to look out and see what else is around in the community. But I would encourage, you know, if I were to have my dream moment, it would be able to get the educators in a room and just have, you know, for a couple hours or whatever, and talk to them about the existing programs that we have available to them, you know, not just here at Kennedy Space Center, but throughout the agency. You know, we have a great educator resource center that I think hardly ever gets used. We do have a program where I think it's sixth graders come and visit at our visitor center for free a day in December, which is great at inspiring the kids. But I think that just touches it's a tip of the iceberg on what we actually have available and what we could afford or what we could offer to educators that would enrich their students' lives. And I just want one last thing that I thought was interesting, because I have a daughter and she's like, we were talking about different careers at NASA, and I was talking to Dr. Dava Newman about, she's interested in fashion design. I'm like, come on, don't you want to do the STEM stuff? And Dava was saying, well, because Dava's a PhD and she does a spacesuit thing, and she goes, so think about the impact of getting girls and young women who might be interested in fashion design into designing the next generation spacesuits and all that. And so I thought that was a real cool connection there. So I think if we continuously look to make those connections, we'll be able to help do what you're already doing.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Do we have one last question from the audience? All right, right down here in front. Just wait for...
Good afternoon, everyone. I was wondering if this is, if we end up having the long-term garden in the space station, how would we, or is there a plan to replenish the minerals in the clay? Because I know that a lot of minerals are kind of uptaken by the vegetables, and how we would maintain that long-term.
So how do we maintain the minerals and recycle them when we have Martian gardens, so to speak? All right, that's... composting I think will be one. There's I know some of our team here are working on ash, and I'll turn it over to Joya. I think she knows a little bit more on that, but and then we can maybe talk about how we get there.
It's an excellent question, because this is not for long term, right? This is for microgravity, and for microgravity everything has to be contained, but there's not really an easy way to clean out those pillows, to replant them. We've done a lot of work here in hydroponics in the past, and hydroponics is a great technique because you can have the nutrients in a solution. We've done a lot of work on composting, where you can take the inedible plant waste and use microorganisms, bacterial bioreactors to reclaim those nutrients. We have a very active work on water processing here, taking gray water, wash water, and other types of dirty water, and being able to reclaim the nutrients out of that using bacteria, and then you could feed those nutrients into the plants. It's all part of this greater kind of regenerative, sustainable life support system and using biology. As Trent was saying, we have a big project right now on biochar, and some people in the audience can tell you more about that, but that's taking the plant wastes and essentially making charcoal out of it and mixing that in with growth media. We're interested in looking at Mars regolith, once we get some back, and simulated Mars regolith to be able to study how well plants would grow in that. So if you want to have a substrate to help support the plants, maybe the nutrients are coming from the solution, but the regolith can help support the roots, keep them, give them something to grow in. So we have a lot of different areas. We haven't really solved all of those problems, but there's a lot of research that needs to be done. So if you're interested, we could use all the help we can get.
All right, terrific. So, on our way to Mars, we're going to grow plants. We have a Kennedy Space Center, getting ready for the multi-user spaceport, and supporting the plant biology that we do on space station, utilizing space station as a stepping stone to the solar system for human exploration. And commercial crew are going to double our crew time on space station, and again bring back our capability to fly from United States. So thank you all, and if you want to learn more, you can go to nasa.gov/ISS, and thank you again. I really appreciate it.